What does success mean?
How would you redefine success?
You gotta find somebody who you genuinely connect with, who you genuinely feel, because...
What's the story behind MojoRojo? Did you ever think that humor in your life came as a coping mechanism?
It's not, and there's teachers, there's parents, and I was just very fortunate to have a lot of...
Did engineering get in a mix then? Hello, welcome to the Samarpan Podcast. I'm Raksha, clinical psychologist at Samarpan Health and Recovery. Today I have someone really special on our podcast. You might know him as a performer, comedian, writer. We are going to be speaking about mental health, comedy, burnout, and also his journey in therapy. I hope you love watching this video as much as I have recording this. Let's get started. Rohan, today we are going to go a little off script with you.
Because Rohan is also an incredibly anxious person and has ADD and is here for mental health reasons.
So we're going to talk about everything mental health, comedy, but more about your journey on it. And it's going to be fun.
Yes.
So my first question.
Yes.
What's the story behind MojoRojo?
You know what? There's obviously the Powerpuff Girls are involved. Second of all, when I was 16 and stupid, as opposed to now 42 and stupid, I had a blog, like a proper old school text blog, whose header was, and I say this with great shame, Rojo, Mojo, Mo blow for yo dough. I apologize. I apologize to everybody who had to hear that. I hear how it sounds and how cringy it was. And then Rojo Mojo just stuck from my blogging days. And then when I needed to get an Instagram account, I couldn't get Rojo Mojo.
Something that I've always seen you talk about, comedy, of course, but comics, characters. I've seen you be a regular at Comic Cons.
Yes.
So did that shape your early life? What has your experience been like? I've always seen you wearing graphic t-shirts with,
there we go. Anime
comic
today.
strips and anime.
Today. Yes.
Yeah. So.
Not just my early life. I think it continues to shape my life. Like pop culture, comics, all of that stuff continues to shape my life. Definitely shaped my early life in the sense that I watched a lot, like a lot of kids basically. Watched a lot of cartoons, watched a lot of TV. Fell in love really, really hard in the sense that I don't know how to explain it, but ever since I was a kid, like I knew I wanted to do something in the pop culture space, like something or the other. I think later on in life, getting an ADD diagnosis explained some of it.
What do you mean by that?
Just literally, right? Looking back and I'm like, oh, no wonder anytime I saw anything that was even a little colorful and shiny, I was like, I like this. So, also I was very, very fortunate that I had parents that always sort of encouraged me to read no matter what format it was. So sometimes that was comics and I'm talking about like all the way from old school Tinkle, Champak, Chandamama to event, because back then there was no access to like, your DC, Marvel comics, etc., all of that. To then eventually as I grew up, actually all of your superhero comics, I think I only discovered after the age of 15 and 16, honestly. But always there and always enjoyed it. And there's just something, I think it's an incredibly, I think it's often, and I think this is true of animation and cartoons and comic books and all of those things, is we're very quick to dismiss them as children's mediums. Like we're very, very quick to sort of be like, this is for kids. But I think that they're a pretty rich vein of storytelling.
Is that where you learned your storytelling, comedy? Do you derive a lot of your experience and...
From everything I've watched, I think I've picked up from, I think just as somebody who does a form of storytelling for a living, I'm always looking out for, how is this thing telling its story in a way that is different or engaging? And I think that is true for anything from, SWAT cats to Game of Thrones to The Bear. Like, I think that's just true throughout. So, I think in everything that you watch, you just go, okay, how is this achieving great storytelling? And what can I learn from it? And I think that's true of pretty much every piece of art / content. And I think in today you can extend that to be from like an episode of a cartoon like Bluey all the way up to like just a well done Instagram reel. They're all storytelling. Right, at the end of the day.
How did you fall in love with storytelling? Because it is so personal to have a world being written by you, you need to have a vision, right? I think that is what colors, cartoons, characters, comic strip always bring, that sort of visualization, help you visualize, and then you make a story. So how did that shape your early life? Does it have that impact in your storytelling now, the way that you see it now? Maybe even comedy, career in comedy for that
Yeah,
matter.
100%. I think just in general, storytelling was a huge part of my childhood, thanks to encouragement again from parents and teachers. My mum and dad, from a very early age, put a lot of books in my hand. Literally, I think for as far back as I can remember, reading books was a huge thing. Like, and again, they weren't extremely complicated. Like, I'm talking like Hardy Boys, Nancy Drew, all of that stuff. But I think I read every single one. I was given by my parents a gift of a library subscription. Reading libraries aren't really a thing anymore. But back then, there was the local Shemaru library near the house. In school, if there was ever like an essay writing competition or a story writing competition or any of that stuff, I think I just found myself naturally drawn to it as a result of being given so much exposure to it by like my teachers and my parents. And it's there's teachers, there's parents, and I was just very fortunate to have a lot of good influences in my life when it came to storytelling. Like, I still remember, even as a kid, was that my mum did with me was so. In fact, very close to where we're shooting right now in Churchgate and Fort, there are these beautiful roadside second-hand booksellers, and there's a lot of bookstores on the road. So my mom would take me once every few months, and she would, back then, and I'm talking about like the early 90s, right? She would give me between 50 and 100 rupees, which back then was like a princely sum. And she'd be like, this is your budget. You get as many books as you can in this. So we'd be walking around looking for the best deal, and I'd come home, sometimes at 5 rupees a book. Like, sometimes I'd come home with like 20 Doctor Who novels or 20 Hardy Boys novels that I found for 5 rupees each, and things like that.
And those are expensive now.
Those are
extremely expensive.
Exactly.
If you go and see any of these bookstores that you're talking about, all these roadside bookstores, they sell it for around 200 rupees right now, and it's expensive.
Yeah, it is extremely expensive, and I was very fortunate to get access to it at that sort of price and those second-hand books. And so I think that just naturally, so I was exposed to so many different kinds of storytelling as a kid. And while being exposed to it as a consumer, I was also by my teachers encouraged to do my own form of it. And again, teachers and parents both always encourage me, if there's an elocution competition, put up your hand. If there's a debate competition, put up your hand. If there's an essay writing competition, put up your hand. If there's a school play, put up your hand, right? So I think, in that sense, storytelling was always...
Did that ever become pressuring though? Because you were keeping on applying for all competitions.
No, because the thing is, right, at least when you're in school, the real pressure is coming from, at least in India, from the science and maths and all of those scores, right? Because you're constantly told that those are the scores that are going to matter, and understandably, we live in an incredibly competitive world. So this, in a way, became almost like an outlet, where as opposed to competing for the marks or competing for whatever, this is just love of the game stuff. Like, I genuinely enjoyed going to elocutions and debates and all of those things, and got a pretty legit high from if, say, I ever won or did well in those things or all of those things. So no, I don't think I ever look back at that part of the academic or extracurricular thing and feel like,
how
my God, that was a lot of pressure.
How did engineering get in a mix then? Because it was in a
Indian
mix.
boy, come on, Indian boy. And in the 90s, you were told that there's basically, it's not like my parents are business people. They themselves are professionals. So they're like, look, if you want a career or if you want a life, the path, at least in India, is, at least in the 90s, was you either become an engineer, you become a doctor, and your medicine wasn't for me. So as somebody who was doing well in like my basic math and science course and all of that, I was like, oh, okay, I guess this is the natural route. And that's how engineering entered the mix. And then a couple of years into it, I realized that, I'd essentially just gone with the flow and basic academic and peer pressure and reached here. But I'm not enjoying this, and I'm bluntly, I think one of the hardest things to admit at the age of 16, 17, especially as an Indian student, is I don't think I'm smart enough for this. I don't think I have the aptitude for this. I'm looking around the class and I'm looking around at all of these people around me, and they seem to be they seem to have a better grip on this than I do. And it's not like I wasn't doing the work. I was going to every class. I was going to every tuition. I was doing every assignment. And then I was sort of like, I don't think this is for me.
I think that is sort of a similarity between the both of us also. Because when you chose comedy and you chose that path of writing, maybe that's where you began, psychology was also not very much appreciated.
Right. And when did you do this, if I may ask?
This was 12 years back.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah,
so it really wasn't in the conversation at all.
Never in the conversation. And I think I resonate with you when you said that the science, math, it somewhere plays with you in your mind. And it's the same. There was this conversation I remember I had with mom right before going for medicine and the entrance exam, and I remember this so vividly because these moments you do have an image, right? Whenever you have this conversation, either you're dropping out or you're having a failure, you're having this conversation. I remember sitting on my bed preparing for MHCET, that was what it was called back then for medicine, and I remember that I looked at her and I was like, I don't think I can do this.
And I'm curious, what was her reaction?
It was May 1st. It is Maharashtra Day.
Right, okay.
So she was like prepping for some sort of function that was happening in the society. So she was like, हाँ घर पे आके बात करते बाद में. And she came back and she's like, हाँ तो क्या बोला था तभी? It's like, I don't think I can do this. I bawled. I cried. She's like, okay. Do you think like you really want to waste 2 years of prepping to not give an exam? So one thing that I think I'm grateful to her is that she made me give the exam irrespective.
Right.
Whether I wanted to choose it, not want to choose it. And I'm so grateful that she made me do that.
That's awesome.
Because she heard me out, but she's like, hey, kiddo, you really need to give the exam.
Fair enough. After that, you can make whatever decision you want.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
And that came up when you were talking about it. So, yeah. And when you are talking about engineering, there was this interesting bit that I heard in one of the conversations that you have online, where you said that the way you quit your engineering was something which you regret, or you're not happy about.
I didn't actually have an honest conversation with my parents about it. I just essentially let my grades and I let my grades and my attendance sink to a level where the college basically kicked me out. Like that, it was essentially the coward's way out at that time. And then I went and told my parents, I'm like, hey, so now this has happened and I've had a year drop. And now I'm sort of ready to have this conversation with you about how I don't really feel like this is for me. And even now looking back at it, like I very much realized that the sort of anger that they had was not about the fact that I did this, but the way I did it. Where essentially the idea that you did it in a sort of cowardly way, as opposed to if you just come and had a conversation with us right from the start, instead of this sort of dropping out, essentially tanking it, then that would have been different. But over a couple of months, we found our way back to peace.
Retrospectively again, like if you would have wanted to make a choice back then, would you do it differently? Do you think you would have done the same thing?
And there's no way to answer that question, right? Because hindsight is always 20/20. And I think one of the things that happens, especially when as adults we look back at our academic careers and the choices we make then, when we then try to answer these questions again about different choices, we're now coming from this place of what 42-year-old secure me thinks, or what, in your case, sorry, I don't know how old you are, whatever, like secure in this place, like, I would have now, if I was there, I would have told that teacher this, or I would have done this. But the fact is, we forget is that at that age, 16, 17, 18, and I'm even talking to kids who are doing it today, is we forget that when you're in that position, how absolutely terrifying that decision feels, how small you feel in the face of all of the things that are going to come. Because this is still very much an age which in India, where it feels like, one paper is going to decide my life. One teacher, 3 marks here or there are going to decide my fate. And that's pretty much put into your head. So, it's very easy for me now from a position of sort of security and success to be like, I'd love to go back and do things differently. But 17-year-old me was scared. 17-year-old me just didn't even know at the time, but was dealing with like severe crippling anxiety about it, panic essentially about it. And So yeah, I don't think there's this one of those things where you can correctly answer it, because in hindsight you're always like, oh, I would have done this, I would have done that, etc. But
Yeah, interesting. And in that entire journey, right, whether it was from school, college, writing, finally finding your niche in comedy, there was also a journey of you having a personal loss also. And if you're comfortable talking about it, you lost your dad in that journey somewhere
did,
when you
yes.
started writing, I guess,
Yeah.
if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
How did you manage that with your work? How was the experience like at that time? And what kind of a support would you have probably wished for?
It was tough, obviously. At that time, it was incredibly tough. Losing a parent is difficult for anybody, I think, at any stage in their life. Especially if it's one thing if I know there's people watching who probably, maybe some people have like estranged parents or things like that. In that situation, I don't know what it's like, but if you have, say, a close relationship with your parents, that's, I think, at any stage in life, losing them is difficult. If I have to look for a silver lining in that moment of loss, it is that it happened at a point in my life where I was just a little more mentally secure and stable, and sort of had found this new career that I was enjoying. So I was in that position where I could sort of deal with it, process my feelings. And I'm very fortunate to have a great support system. I have a lovely extended family. I have a lovely friend circle. I have all of those things. So it's never easy, but I think I look back at it, and at that time, I did not have like a therapist, or I wasn't in therapy yet. But it was only a couple of years after that I got into therapy. So after the sort of first wave of dealing with it, like the immediacy of it with friends, family, etc., a few years later, once a little emotional distance had happened between it, I also managed to talk it through with my therapist and all of the feelings that were there, because losing a parent is hard, but relationships with parents are always complicated when they're around, right? So there's good feelings and there's bad feelings, and there's the stuff that was left unsaid, and there's the stuff that you wish you'd said, and all of that. So I was just very, very fortunate to have all kinds of support, whether it's friends, family, and then eventually therapy. And that helped me deal. I think it's one of those things where if you've experienced it, you'll know that it could be 10 years later, it could be 12 years later, there'll still be a random day where there's a stab of pain, or there's I miss them. But I guess over time the grief evolves into something that is manageable, and something that can in some ways just also be quite a beautiful thing. And I think at this point I just look back and I just hold on to the good memories.
It's almost like life builds around the grief. Like the grief doesn't.
What
the
choice
grief
is there,
stays.
right? What choice? The grief is always there.
Grief is there.
But you also have to
Life.
process it, because I think what can happen if you don't process it, and I've seen this with people, is right. It can sort of, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to use this like in a light way as an analogy, but it can sort of, if you just let it fester, it can grow inside you like a cancer. If you don't deal with it, if you don't process it, in a world that we raised you to sort of live in. Whether we are around or not, versus we sort of want you in this tomb of grief constantly with us because we're gone. So yeah, and also I lost my dad was I think hugely contributed to my sense of humor. Dad was an incredibly funny person. His worldview was quite light and bouncy. He taught me a lot about resilience and dealing with things. So just looking back at it, I feel like the last thing my dad would have wanted is for me to sort of just sit in constant grief, and he'd sort of be like, no, just go live your life, and take the best of the lessons that I taught you, and if there are things you didn't like about my life, change them in your own life, but go out there and live.
And I'm sure you're talking about acknowledging feelings, talking about it in a very in an easy way, because you've gone through it already.
There's distance now. It's been a good 12, 13 years since it happened.
But it would have taken time.
Oh, of course. Time.
A lot of time.
It's one of the things we say about comedy also, right? That we call the easiest definition of comedy is tragedy plus time. It's an essential ingredient of the comedic process is tragedy plus time. So,
Okay.
Time is everything, but there's a sort of component to, there's no fixed time. You can take time to do it, but also just make sure that you're moving forward, because sometimes what can happen is, in this excuse of, oh, I need time karke, you will just sit in the same space for the longest time, and then that can kind of become like this swamp that you sink into and don't get out of. So the thing is, take your time, but move forward. Move forward. Honor their memory by moving forward.
Yeah, and that brings me to the question of, when did you find yourself in a space where you thought therapy was needed? How did you even come across this thing called therapy? Because I do understand that pop culture, lot of speaking around people, I'm sure you had access to people who might have been going through stuff themselves.
Yeah.
That entire journey of realizing that, okay, I think I need this. I think I might need support, to actually seeking it.
Yeah.
If you can just talk to us about that.
Again, just very, very... So one, just sort of lucky to be self-aware enough to realize that, like, some of the stuff I was feeling wasn't... I don't want to say wasn't normal, because that makes it sound like it, but just wasn't that's not necessarily like the ultimate state of mental equilibrium, at least at that point, where I'm like to sort of, because there's, when you're dealing with whether it's anxiety or grief or all of those things, often there's that manifests itself in physical ways, right? So sometimes it's as simple as, I can't sleep, my brain is always racing, I'm grinding my teeth clearly in my sleep, I'm showing up to things either short-tempered or distracted or all of those things. And then that starts, you can tell that it's affecting all of your relationships, whether it's professional ones, whether it's, romantic ones, platonic ones, all of that. And again, like I said, I was very lucky to live in a relatively judgment-free space of people who, I think, compared to a lot of people, were enlightened enough in the sense where, like, I didn't grow up in that typical crowd of people who are like, "Arey, ye therapy kuch nahi hota, ye mental depression kuch nahi hota." I think some of the older people in my life, yes, maybe, but at least among friends and peers and people I knew at the time and still know, there was this sense of, hey, if this is how you're feeling, there are people who can help you deal with this in a rational and scientific manner, like approach this very much as a medical problem. And I'm extremely grateful to them, right? Like, one of them, still very dear friend of mine, Shaheen, who like really, really sort of encouraged me to go out there and do it. And then from there began this process of just sort of auditioning a therapist, essentially, which is... because that's what you have to do, right? One of the things that I tell people, like, sometimes because I've been doing therapy for a while, people will come up to me and say, hey, looking for a therapist, what should I do? And my first advice always is, see, it's like relationships, okay? Don't just stick with the first person who gives you attention because you're enjoying the attention. You got to find somebody who you genuinely connect with, who you genuinely feel, because in some ways, this is somebody who you will have the most honest conversations in your life with.
Yeah.
Because a large part of therapy is just going into a non-judgmental space and vocalizing the worst of your thoughts. And those worst of your thoughts can be anything from, I think I am a bad person, to I feel like I want to kill myself, to I think I am failing, to whatever it is that's going on in your life. Right? To think I am a bad romantic partner, I am whatever those things. So to be able to do that, you need to really be comfortable with that person. So I'm always like, hey, if I don't know whether you have the luxury or the time, but speak to 4-5 people. Yeah. And it's okay to do 1 or 2 sessions with a therapist and then look at a therapist and be like, hey, this is not working for me. I think I need to speak to somebody else. Like, I'm sure you're great, I'm sure you're professional, but
not being able to connect.
Not for me. And it's something that I've read about a lot also, where, for example, so many factors can affect, right? Like, for example, supposing you go to a therapist who reminds you a lot of, say, your mom or your dad, right? Then now you'll feel like, oh, can I say certain things, right? Like in front of them, because you feel that barrier. Versus you might go to a therapist who's more, say, your age, or then you might be like, oh, I can have a very honest conversation with this person. So there are many, many factors that can come into choosing a therapist. And I'm very, very fortunate, touch wood, that found somebody that really click and gel with. And, now this person I've been seeing this person for a good 8-9 years now. So...
Was it difficult to find the right therapist? And I'm saying this in the context of you being so publicly out there. And did that play in or weigh in somewhere in the factor of choosing a therapist?
No, not really. In the sense that in that particular space, I was just looking for somebody I was comfortable with. I wasn't thinking from the perspective of like, oh, I'm out there, I'm probably have to be careful. This, that. I was like, no, I'm just looking for somebody that I feel comfortable talking to as a person, irrespective of whatever the outside noise is. And I was very fortunate to find somebody relatively, I think, pretty quickly in the process. After meeting just one, two others, it also helped that. Like some of the one, two of the first ones that I spoke to just genuinely didn't leave such a great impression on me that when I found this sort of third person, I was just like, oh, this is great. This is comfortable and this is amazing. And I'm really enjoying this process of talking to you.
Yeah.
And yeah.
How has the journey in therapy been like? Like 8-9 years.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, amazing. It's essentially the analogy that I always use. It's like going to the gym. It's not something that a lot of people are always like going to the doctor. I think no, it's like going to the gym. As a journey, there's good days and bad days.
Yeah.
There's days where it feels like a completely light and chill conversation like this, and then there's days where you hit upon something which is a tougher conversation, or you spend it in some of your worst feelings, and just sort of talking through like your absolute lowest lows. You come out of some therapy sessions feeling very light and bouncy, and then you come out of some just feeling like, man, I just want to go home and cover myself in a blanket and just not deal with the world today. Yeah. And I think both are very important parts of the process. So, it's been a constant journey. We touch upon different things. Sometimes you finish dealing with one thing, or you find a coping mechanism for one thing, and then it just sort of uncovers the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So
how important was the support of your loved ones in this journey specifically? And I'm asking this in a context because a lot of clients who come in, most of their parents don't know that they are in therapy.
Yeah.
And it's an extremely difficult conversation to have. And when in itself, mental health struggle is so isolating, right? Like it feels like you're caged, you're put in a box, it's dark. These are very sort of usual statements that I hear in a therapy room. So you have seen the other side of it where you did have people around you. So how important was that cushion? Incredibly
important. Again, I've always said I've been very fortunate to be around people where I could express this and not immediately be judged for it. Or let's say even if they did judge me for it, they did me the kindness of not expressing it. So it was great to be around people where I always felt like I could say, hey, I'm going through this process. This is what I'm learning about myself. This is what's going on. And then because what also happens with that process is sometimes you just have to be we've all done this thing, right? Where sometimes we're in a room and we're talking about something and you just have to be the first person to express that opinion, and suddenly 10 other people are like, bro, same.
Yeah.
So I was very, very fortunate to sort of be in that circle where sometimes I would bring it up and that other people be like, you know what, same. Or sometimes other people would be like, oh, I'm going through this, and I could be like, hey, same. So that's great. Little tougher again, like, so for example, like I don't, like my mom is a lovely woman, but I don't think she quite understands, like she's not from a generation that like gets the therapy thing, for example. So that was a slightly tougher conversation, but what I will give her credit for is that her whole life she's sort of been like, at least ever since Tyra, she's like, even if she's like, okay, it's not for me or whatever, I completely get it for you.
Gosh, that's so important.
That's very important. And I'm very fortunate that by and large people in my life understand that this is an ongoing journey. I'm sure it also helps that with every passing year of it, I seem to become a slightly better person just because I deal with my own shit. Like, for example, just very bluntly, if I look at like what 2015 me was like and what 2025 me is like, I think I'm a slightly less angry person. I think I'm a less constantly reactive person than I would have been at that point. I'm a more mellow person. I'm capable of sitting with my feelings instead of sitting on my feelings, which is a massive distinction that I learned to make. And it's been great.
Give us an example of that, sitting with your feelings versus on it.
So for example, like say 4 years ago, 5 years ago, any sort of emotional conversation, I would bottle my feelings up until it became like, okay, I'm just not going to confront, I'm not going to confront. And then it would just one day come out as like one, as opposed to now where instead I will just sort of sit with my feelings, ask myself what I'm feeling, and then sort of immediately have a conversation with the person going that, hey, we had this talk yesterday and you said this thing. I'm not really feeling great about that thing that you said. Just want to express that right now. And if you want to have a conversation about it, we can. But there's like way less bottling up of it and letting it build.
And that makes you feel lighter.
Yes.
You don't carry things home.
Significantly.
Yeah.
Like significantly.
In that journey of 8-9 years, and this I say with a lot of understanding that my introduction to you happened with AIP. And there's a lot of history that I carry with it also, considering I've gone for shows, been there everywhere.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So having that understanding, it was there is always this internal struggle that we have, internal success that we have, everything. But when it happens publicly also, there's external pressure of constantly saying the right thing, apologizing publicly. That happened in the last 8-9 years. And I'm sure since you said you did, were you seeking therapy at that time also in that journey?
Yeah.
And if you can just walk us through how that was for you, because after that came a significant break as well.
Yeah.
Which I think, what was that break for? How did you deal with that?
I think all in all, like, just it was all great. Like, in the sense that, yeah, there was extreme emotion. There was a lot of stuff happening in public. There was, just the sudden sort of very public visibility, all of that stuff. But even though it was stressful, see, any job you do can be stressful, right? Any job. Yeah. And like, this would have been true whether I was an engineer or whether I was a whatever. So at least I had and still have the great privilege of my stressful job being something that I still very much enjoy. Right? Like, I have the stress, but I have the stress doing a thing that I enjoy, as opposed to having the stress doing a thing that I don't enjoy. I don't wake up every day to do something that I don't enjoy. So even when it's at its most stressful, even when it's at its most sort of horrible or whatever, I can always finally find my way back to the idea that, but I love doing this. It's crazy that this is a thing that I get to do, and that I get to do for a career, a thing that I chose to do, as opposed to a thing that was just hoisted upon me. Or like so many people who have to say sometimes just take a corporate job that they might not want. Not saying all, a lot of people that love being sort of, corporate people, etc., whatever. But there's a lot of people who have to do jobs in this world they don't want to do. So yeah, sometimes when it's stressful and terrible and all of those things, I still come back to the fact that, hey, but man, I get to do this. That's crazy to me.
One aspect of your career.
One aspect, yeah. I mean, it was tough for like a good 4-5 months, but you dealt with it. Like, what else is there to do? Like, you deal with it, you pick up. And again, like in hindsight, like back then, obviously, it felt very stormy and very scary, but I was very lucky to have a support system of friends and family and all of those things going, this too shall pass. This too shall pass. This too shall pass. And I think looking back at it now in 2025, it's definitely just made me more resilient, right? Looking back, where I'm like, oh, I've been through that. I can deal with anything.
Anything at all.
Right? Because just after dealing with that and still sort of emerging alive and relatively well. Relatively well. Yeah, it just makes it possible to sort of be like, yeah, okay, even when terrible things happen, sometimes all you need is time and you will be okay.
It's very similar to something that I saw, the video that you have on Anxiously Yours. It's on YouTube, of course, for everyone to see. There's this segment where you speak, and correct me if I'm wrong, going plainly through memory right now, that you speak about the segment where if there was one thing you wanted to say as a message, it would be that not today, not tomorrow, the relief is going to come.
Yeah.
And you have to just keep going.
100%. That relief also won't be permanent, but what you live for through the bad days, etc., whatever. See, all of us go through bad periods in our life, right? We go through some terrible periods in our life, but eventually what happens is one day, and you don't even realize when it happens, but then you'll just catch yourself on a random day just suddenly enjoying the breeze, or just enjoying an ice cream, or doing something like that. And you'll just have this moment where you'll stop and be like, you know what? For the last 20 minutes, I haven't felt the weight of that grief, or I haven't felt the weight of my problem. This is just a nice feeling. This ice cream that I'm eating right now, or this sort of sunshine on my face right now, or this great nap that I just took, or whatever those things. And I feel like life is really, at the end of the day, we can sit here and intellectualize the shit out of it. But really, life is just a lot of those moments, right?
Choti khushiyan.
Yeah, really. That's really what it is, right? It's just it's a good meal with friends. It's a laugh shared with somebody that you love. It's a good run on a beautiful day, and the endorphins that come from that. It's all of those things. It's a kitten that crosses your path in the street. It's all of those things at the end of the day. And as long as life keeps throwing a few of those things at you, you know what? Makes the shit days totally worth it.
Worth it.
Yeah.
Such an interesting journey, especially. But there was one question that I wanted to ask you specifically. Out of 8-9 years of being in therapy, what is that one takeaway about yourself specifically, that out of this entire journey that we just spoke about,
Right.
that you have kept very close, or some statement or something that you keep going back to?
Oh, how to distill all of it down to one sort of this thing. Okay, if I have to distill it down to one thing, oh God, I hate this question because this is one of those where I'm going to give you an answer and I'm going to leave the room and I'm going to go home and I'm lying in bed tonight. I'm going to think of a significantly better answer and it'll be too late by then. But
Shoot it.
I think very simply, the one takeaway is that the great thing about therapy is that it's just the amount of perspective it's given me, which is that on the days where I am feeling needlessly invincible, it helps me remember that I'm not necessarily as invincibly strong as I think I am. But on the days where I'm feeling down, it has also taught me that I'm nowhere near as weak as I think I am either. And I think that if you can sort of remember those two ends of the spectrum and sort of live within that, I think that's a good path.
I don't think you can top this answer.
But no, I mean, you know what? We'll find out. The only one way to find out is if I text you at 3 o'clock in the morning going, shit! I thought
Can
of
we
a better
add this?
answer. Like, damn it. But yeah, I think that's what it is. If I had to go with one. And that sometimes it is very difficult to be honest with oneself, especially about one's weaknesses. But it is also extremely important to do.
It's very important.
Like, very, very, very important. Like, find a way where you don't have to admit it to anybody else in the world, but find a way to admit it to yourself. Because then you'll grow a little bit. And this is, let's face it, this is still an incredibly privileged conversation in the Indian context. And I think the fact that today we are sitting in this air-conditioned room in Mumbai and having this conversation and have access to these tools and these words is still an incredibly privileged conversation. But it was a choice. It was a choice. And once I realized that, it's something that people are responding to. Because again, it just came from a place of whether it was with AIB or whether it's in my comedy career, I have a lot of contact with, people within that sort of 16 to 24 range. And like we were talking about earlier, we forget how scary the world can seem at that time. So I think once I got a little perspective, once I got a little this thing, I was like, okay, this is for that 16-year-old for whom the world seems terrifying. This is, if I can put it out there, that one day the world will seem a little less scary, or that there are ways to navigate this terrifying world, and that terror or all of those, whether it's that terror or that depression or that anxiety or that panic or all of those things that you're feeling, these are valid, scary mental problems through which there is a sort of clinical or medical or rational path one way or another, right? Like this is, there's a rational path to it as opposed to, you will go somewhere and someone will do some sorcery on you or whatever, then, okay, good for all of us, right?
Do you consume a lot of mental health content? As a
no,
consumer?
not that much, because I feel like just between sort of the constant therapy, etc. My other worry is that on the one hand, there's dealing with mental health, but there's also, I don't want to fetishize it. I don't want to fetishize it to the point where my every sort of waking minute is just constantly viewed through the lens of mental health, where now that in itself is its own obsession, right?
Yeah.
Where everything is just about, my mental. Because sometimes, sometimes you just have to go out there and live your life. sometimes you just literally have to do it without sort of overthinking it. And then there's other times you have to come back and sort of, in the same way that today you can't live your whole life through the I'm a gym freak, this thing, right? Where it's like, I'll never enjoy this thing, or I'll never enjoy an ice cream, or I'll never. So in that same way, like, I don't want that to just be something that overwhelms my perspective. Like at all times, like one of the things I'm most terrified of is like, I don't want every single conversation in my life to sound like full of therapy speak, right? Because then you're not really having
a lot of it anyway.
100%. There's a lot of that, right? So I'm very wary of that, and so there's a certain amount that I consume, but some days, like I said, some days just want to watch SWAT cats, yo.
Which is its own therapeutic
100%.
zone. So,
Catharsis max. Sometimes you just need to watch two cats smash it up in a jet. It's just, that's life.
Yeah. And that therapy speak also comes a lot with sort of understanding what you are going through, like as a person who's looking to seek mental health help. But also it's kuwa aur khai ke beech mein wala situation.
Also, see, I'm not a medical professional. I can only speak about today, whether it's therapy or mental health, I can only speak about it from the lens of what I am going through as a lay person and what I am dealing with. My biggest fear is claiming some sort of expertise that I don't have, and trying to talk about like mental health in a way where, because I think we do live in an era of like needlessly, like essentially, like everyone wants to be a guru these days in some way, shape or form, and you don't actually have the actual qualifications to be that. So I'm very wary of being that. So which is why when I'm talking about mental, I want to be very careful about weighing the words that I say. I want to be very clear even in this conversation that I can only speak to my experiences and what I have gone through. I claim absolutely no expertise in the field. Please don't see anything I'm saying in this space as like an expert opinion, etc., whatever. Please go on your own journey. Please consult the right professional people before making any of these decisions. Please, feel free to take this as a starting point, but I'm not an expert. My job is to make people laugh. I am a comedian. I am not a mental health expert. I'm just a guy that dealt with some shit. That's all.
Yeah, lived experiences.
So please view this from that purely amateur point of view, and come to people like this instead to deal with shit. Yeah.
It was a great time talking to you.
Thank you. I had a great time also.
It's been such a pleasure having you, but we are going to take some last few questions.
Okay.
And of course, there's no pressure to be wise or witty.
Okay, amazing.
Before we wrap up.
Always pressure to be wise. How dare you? There's always pressure, right?
And
talking to a chronic overthinker here, but go on.
Okay. We are going to go through 5 questions.
Okay.
Nothing too deep.
Okay.
Just whatever comes to your mind.
Okay.
Right? After all that we have spoken, what does success mean to you after being in the limelight for so many years?
What does success mean?
How would you redefine success? Because I'm sure at some point of time, you would have, all that you have is success.
I think
but now,
how I would define it now is a combination of do I feel good about the actual quality of work that I am doing, combined with am I getting the sort of response that I want to that work, but also balanced with, do I feel good in my own body and mind while doing this work? It's not just that one metric of I will put my body and mind like on the line completely just for some sort of professional success. I think for me, it's a combination of, do I feel good in my body and in my mind while also doing good work, while also having a decent relationship with the people in my life who matter. Like to me, success is like my life not just being about one thing.
Did that metric somewhat get dangled previously?
Yeah, I mean, I think earlier, right, when I was younger, like there was a point, especially when I was just, and I think this is fair, like when you're starting off in your career, at one point your focus just becomes sort of rising through certain ranks, right? And that's fair. Like, and this is true of 20 somethings in the corporate world, and this is true of people in the creative field. But then it got to a point where I realized that I don't ever want my life to be a thing where if for any reason tomorrow this one thing goes away, my entire life collapses, my entire sense of self collapses. It can't come from this one thing. It's all eggs in one basket. No, right? I want to, for like, God forbid, tomorrow for some reason I wake up and comedy is just not a thing anymore, or just performing or entertaining is not a thing anymore. I still want to feel like my life has value from the friends and relationships and family and my interests and my hobbies and all of those things.
Okay, that's a nice answer. What's something that you're unlearning right now?
What's something that I'm unlearning right now? I'm trying to unlearn laziness, and I'm trying to replace that with structure. Yeah.
Has that been helpful?
It has, incredibly. Incredibly.
Okay.
Yes. Go to the gym, people. Lift weights, move your body, breathe deep. It is game changing.
Okay. When do you feel the most grounded? I'm sure as someone who has been through anxiety, feeling grounded at moments to feel present has been incredibly helpful.
Yeah.
So, but what has helped you? Is there any technique, anything that you remember, safe space? What has helped you staying grounded?
I think, again, love of my friends and family, because it does not matter what, like, Rohan is outside. What matters to them is who or what I am as a person. And they can sort of bring me back to earth when I'm flying very fast, and also pick me up when I'm very, very down. And then the other thing, again, is just, and this is again going to sound so silly and simple, but just exercise. Yeah. Just pushing my body in a way where it almost comes to sort of failure, and I realize its limits, but also suddenly, like, my heart rate is 155. I'm breathing deep, and it feels like every nerve is active and beautiful. And I think in that moment, I just feel incredibly grounded and present in my body. Like, there's no time to float out and think about 100 other things. Like, sometimes it's as simple as when you're lifting a heavy weight, or you're in the middle of a run, or all of those things. You are never more present in your body than in that moment. Yeah.
How about dealing with anxiousness on a day-to-day basis? Whether it's, I don't know, meetings. I don't think. Do you get anxious in some meetings?
I do sometimes. Yeah, I do sometimes. But I've realized, again, as I get older, I've realized a lot of it is just about, it's crazy how much, like, the basics matter. Sleep properly, drink enough water, eat proper food, exercise right, go to therapy, do all of that, and it's just better. Yeah.
Okay. A piece of advice you actually followed and you're extremely glad about.
A piece of advice I actually followed and I'm extremely glad about. Okay.
Out in the open. It could be in therapy, otherwise, wherever.
Oh, very simple. When I was very, very young, one of my dad's friends said this very, very simple thing to me. He's like, the greatest job in the world is if you can do something you enjoy and also somehow see the world and get paid for it at the same time. That's a great job. And I've been very fortunate to do that. Yes. And that's a piece of advice that I have followed and has worked out for me.
And you've been grateful about.
Yes, very, very grateful about it. Yes.
Okay. One thing that therapy has taught you, I think we already covered that.
So many things we covered. Yeah. If you haven't, after this entire chat, figured that one out yet, then shame on you. Attention span truly is gone.
Was there ever a point where humor felt like a shield? Did you ever think that humor in your life came as a coping mechanism?
Little bit, yeah. I think it definitely helped me deal with certain tough emotions, etc. I think some days today it's still a great shield. But the great thing about humor is it's a shield and a sword. It's a shield which sometimes helps defend you from life's greatest horrors, but sometimes it's this fantastic sword that helps you sort of, use your opinion to pierce somebody else's defenses and get through to them. So yeah, humor has been both a shield and a sword.
What about on the days where you go on the stage and some life has thrown a curveball at the end, but you still have to go to the stage?
It's my job. I have to go do it. In some ways, it's okay. You just put that sort of shield on and you do it. Because see, in one way, I'm very fortunate. Okay, let's say life has thrown me a curveball and I have to go on stage. I still have to just basically go nail it for 60 minutes straight. That's my job. I have to go on stage and I have to be amazing for 60 minutes to 2 hours tops, where there's some people who would have to get up and go to their job and be amazing for straight 9 hours or 10 hours or 11 hours. So, it's not always easy, but by and large good.
By and large,
good,
okay. Last 2 questions to go.
Okay.
What's something small that's bringing you joy lately?
Something small that's bringing me joy lately.
Yes.
Anything
that's bringing you joy?
Oh, playing tennis. Yeah.
Lawn tennis?
Lawn tennis, yes. Playing tennis. Playing tennis brings me joy. Yes.
Are you learning it right now?
I used to play as a kid also, but I'm sort of relearning it right now. But yeah, playing tennis brings me joy.
After all that we have spoken right now,
Yes.
how would you want to introduce yourself?
After all I've spoken right now, how would I want to introduce myself?
You can look
Hi,
at
I'm
that.
Rohan. I am a comedian, a writer, a person who spends entirely too much time online. I am an incredibly anxious, overthinky, ADD person who is trying to not be all of those things. But I'm also pretty cool, okay? Like, yeah, I'm awesome.
If there was one takeaway
Yes.
to anyone who's watching this, if I give you like 30 seconds,
Okay.
you have to give a piece of advice, lived experience, I don't know, like a thought to anyone about to go seek therapy, or just to understand someone who's looking at this podcast thinking, okay, maybe not. What would you want to say?
Feel your feelings. Learn to sit with them instead of sitting on them. But somehow find a way to manage that with also going out there and living your life. You cannot live inside your head all the time. That is a dangerous way to live. Life is meant to be lived out in this beautiful world that is there, full of its horrors and terrors also. And feel your feelings, work through your mental issues, etc. But also remember that does not give you the right to be a perpetual asshole to everybody. So walk that balance, empathy for yourself, empathy for other people, and also eat some ice cream. Enjoy. Life is beautiful.
Thank you so much, Rohan.
You're welcome.
It was
Thank you
a
so much for
pleasure.
having me.
It was a pleasure sitting across you, having this conversation.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cut.